You know that moment when life flips upside down in a single phone call? That stupid, ordinary sound, ring ring, becomes the opening note of the worst chapter of your life? Yeah, I didn't know that moment either. Not until last Wednesday at 4:12 p.m., when Maya Khan, 38 years old, student counselor at Crescent University, sat at my desk helping a freshman choose a major, and found out my husband had planned a candlelight dinner for another woman. And not just any woman, a woman he'd been seeing for months, a woman he'd been spending our joint money on, a woman he thought I'd never find out about. Because, as it turns out, when a man cheats, he doesn't grow brains, just illusions. But let me start where the universe decided to humiliate me. I was sitting in my office, surrounded by motivational posters I'd hung up myself. Choose your future. Make smart decisions. Irony level maximum. Life. 1 Maya 0. I was mid-sentence, telling a nervous student that engineering isn't always as hard as it sounds, when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Normally I don't pick up. But something, call it intuition, fate, divine sarcasm, made me excuse myself and answer. Hello, is this Mrs. Maya Khan? The voice was familiar, a little shaky, a little too hesitant for comfort. Yes, speaking. It's me, Bilal. I blinked. Bilal, which Bilal? There are about 40,000 Bilals in Karachi alone, then he clarified. Bilal Catering Services, you booked us for your wedding 12 years ago? Ah, that Bilal. My wedding caterer? A man I had spoken to exactly twice after the wedding, once for a Ramadan discount and once to compliment him on his biryani. Why on earth was he calling me? Jai Bilal Bai, Sabthik. Is everything okay? Silence, then a shaky breath. I don't know how to say this, but your husband has booked a candlelight dinner package for Friday night for a woman named Hania. The world didn't stop, my heart didn't fall. My breath didn't catch, nothing dramatic happened. Because betrayal isn't cinematic. It's silent, it's surgical, it cuts straight through your chest like a cold blade you didn't see coming. I swallowed. What exactly did he book? Another breath. He sounded scared, maybe guilty that he was snitching, maybe worried I'd blame him. A full romantic decor, roses, candles, a custom playlist, and a dessert platter he said she loves. This is his fourth booking since January, same woman, same setup. I only realized today that he stopped. That what? I whispered. That the number on file is yours, the same number he registered on your wedding contract. That's why I called. I didn't feel right hiding it. I stared at the wall, at my degrees, at my framed picture with my husband, Dr. Zahir, orthopedic surgeon, charming, respected, the man I'd spent my life defending whenever relatives asked, Beta, doctors hate hi busy hain. Tum samaj karo? But doctors aren't supposed to be busy with women named Hania. What time is the dinner? I asked. 8 at Baltic Pearl Rooftop. My stomach twisted. That was our place, where he proposed. Where we celebrated our anniversaries. Where he promised me in front of the Karachi skyline that he'd love me forever. And now he was taking someone else there. Someone named Hania, someone who wasn't me. I closed my eyes, breathing through the rising storm inside me. Bilal spoke again. Maya Baji, there's more. Of course there was. There were 3 other dinners like this since January. I double-checked records. He said it was for private celebrations. Private, right? Private from me, I laughed. A soft, painful, broken laugh, the kind someone makes when they've just realized the joke of their life is actually them. Thank you, Bilal, and I hung up. My hands were shaking, my vision blurred. But my mind, oh, my mind was clearer than it had ever been. Because here's the thing about being betrayed. Some people break. Some people cry, some people crumble, but some of us become dangerously calm. And in that calm, a single thought formed. If he wants to play games, I'll teach him how they end. I walked into the ladies' room, locked the door, and stared at my reflection. I didn't look like the type of woman you cheat on. Not that cheating has a type, but still, 38, good job, straight posture, black hair neatly tied, a face that looked tired, yes, but not unloved. Yet apparently unloved was exactly what I'd been. My phone buzzed again. A message from Bilal. Should I confirm the booking for Friday or cancel it? I stared at the message for a long moment. Then something, a spark, a switch, a flame lit inside me. Confirm it. But I'll be sending you a new message for the card. I typed it calmly, smoothly, because if Zahir wanted romance, I'd give him drama. If he wanted secrecy, I'd give him exposure. And if he wanted to act like a hero in someone else's story, I'd happily become the villain in his. I left the bathroom, returned to my office, and told the student, Beta, choose computer science. It always pays off. My voice didn't shake, I didn't cry, I didn't question my sanity. Because the truth was settling in my bones like winter, my husband wasn't mine, and hadn't been mine for a long time. That evening, when Zahir walked into our house at 9:47 p.m., fresh from emergency surgery, smelling of hospital disinfectant and expensive cologne he never used around me, I looked up from my laptop. He smiled, that same devastatingly warm smile that had made me fall for him 13 years ago. Sorry, Maya, he said casually, removing his coat. Long day, you know how surgeries are. I nodded. He didn't know I knew. He didn't know Friday's dinner was confirmed. He didn't know his double life had entered its final chapter. He didn't know his lies were numbered. He didn't know I had already begun pulling the thread that would unravel every secret he'd stitched into our marriage. He didn't know, but he would. After he went to bed, I sat in the dim light of my living room, staring at the walls of a life I thought was stable. The couch we chose together, the shelves we installed. The photo frame showing us laughing in Maldives. The kitchen island where he once told me, Maya, you are my peace. Peace, funny, he'd been finding peace at a rooftop restaurant with candlelights. I opened my laptop. Logged into Google Photos. Because here's the thing about men like Zahir, they cheat with confidence because they think they're clever. But cleverness isn't intelligence. And confidence isn't strategy. He forgot one thing. Digital footprints never lie. Within minutes, a pattern emerged. Photos taken in the same hotel room, picture of a red dress on a hanger, selfies of a girl, blurred, not showing face, but clearly not me, a movie ticket for two, a screenshot of a message saying, Friday night will be special, wear the dress I bought you. I leaned back in my chair, special Friday night. The same night I would rewrite his entire life. But the worst wasn't the photos, it wasn't the lies, it wasn't even the dinners, it was the credit card statement. He'd bought her a gold necklace, worth 65,000 PKR for me. Valentine's Day, a pack of Ferrero Rocher and a fake excuse about work stress. The laughter that escaped me this time was hollow, painful, a laugh that could cut glass. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a midlife crisis. This was a man who had chosen someone else repeatedly, consistently, and expected me to stay clueless. But he had underestimated one thing: I wasn't clueless, I was patient. And patience, when betrayed, becomes the deadliest weapon. That night, as Zahir slept peacefully beside me, I stared at the ceiling, awake, alert, alive in a way I hadn't been in years. And I realized something terrifying and liberating at the same time. I didn't love him the way I used to. Not anymore. Not after what I'd seen. Not after what he'd done. Love needs respect. Love needs truth. Love needs loyalty. He'd given none, so I owed him nothing. I turned on my phone and typed a message to Bill. I'll send the card text tomorrow, deliver the dinner exactly at 8, and make sure the girl opens it first. His reply came instantly. As you say, Baji, I'm with you. A stranger was with me, my husband was not. And that's when I decided I won't confront him today, I'll confront him publicly, where his lies can't hide behind his charm. Because cheating in private is easy, but consequences require an audience. The next morning began like any other Thursday, except everything, every breath, every heartbeat, every tiny sound in the house felt heavier. I woke up before dawn, long before Zahir's alarm, long before the sun crawled into the Karachi sky. I sat on the edge of the bed and watched him sleep. People say sleeping faces tell you the truth. Maybe. But his didn't look guilty or ashamed or burdened by secrets. He looked peaceful, rested, almost innocent. And that innocence made me furious. I walked into the kitchen and made tea for myself, letting the steam hit my face. I needed the warmth because my insides felt cold, like winter had moved into my chest. My mind kept circling the same questions. How long had he been lying? What did he tell her? What lies did he tell himself to justify it? Did he feel anything at all when he came home to me every night? At exactly 6:15 a.m., Zahir strolled in, stretching, yawning, acting like the world wasn't about to collapse on top of him. He kissed the top of my head and said good morning, unaware that I had spent the entire night reading through the digital footprints of his betrayal. I smiled back. In that moment, I learned something about myself. I could act better than any trained actress. Pain had a way of turning you into someone unrecognizable. He showered, dressed, and left for work at 7:02 a.m. The moment I heard the car pull out of the driveway, I opened my laptop. My hands weren't shaking anymore. I wasn't panicking. I wasn't crying. I had shifted into a different version of myself, the version that quietly sorts through chaos and finds order in places nobody expects. I logged into Google Photos again, but this time I didn't skim. I dug deeper, searched timestamps, checked location tags, checked synced screenshots I never knew he kept. And what I found wasn't just proof of cheating, it was a timeline of a double life so carefully arranged it almost felt planned. January 9th, a picture of a coffee cup with a red heart drawn in the foam, not unusual, except the shot angle showed two cups and a woman's hand holding one. Her nails were painted a deep maroon color. I zoomed in. The reflection in the cup showed part of her hair straightened, dyed honey brown, a strand falling over her cheek. I froze at that image for a long time. January 22nd. A selfie of Zahir in a hotel lobby mirror. He wasn't taking the picture for himself. The angle showed someone else in the frame, a blurred figure adjusting her hair. The lobby was familiar. I had seen that exact marble floor in a hotel brochure. It was the same place he once said was too expensive to take me for our anniversary. February 14th, Valentine's Day. While I had spent the evening at home waiting for him, he had gone on call at the hospital. But his photo folder said otherwise. A picture of a table set up with rose petals and glass candle holders. A single chocolate cake with the words "To my sunshine" written on the plate in gold icing. My chest tightened painfully at that. Sunshine, he used to call me that when we first married. When did he stop? I couldn't remember. March 3rd. A screenshot of a conversation on WhatsApp. Not the messages, he had deleted those, but the preview bar at the top showed a smiley face next to a name. Hania, the pinned chat. When I clicked for more details, the display picture showed part of her face. Young, very young, mid-20s maybe, a nose piercing, perfect eyeliner. The kind of confidence in her eyes that comes from being adored by someone who shouldn't be adoring her. I clicked on the deleted backup folder. Zahir wasn't stupid, he had erased most of his traces. But the cloud wasn't loyal to him, only to data. Deleted items were recoverable if you knew where to look. I restored everything, and that's when the real storm hit. There were voice notes, not many but enough. She called him Z in one. He laughed softly in the background, a laugh I hadn't heard from him in years. Not a husband's laugh. A lover's laugh. There were screenshots of movie tickets, dinner receipts, even a photo of a wrapped gift with a card that read, "You deserve the world." I stared at that picture for a long time. In 12 years of marriage, Zahir had never written me a handwritten card, not once. He preferred practical gifts. A new phone, a kitchen appliance, a scarf he picked on the way home. Nothing sentimental, nothing romantic, nothing heartfelt. But for her, he wrote words. Words he never wrote for me. Words he once had maybe, but lost along the way. I let the pain wash over me like a wave, but I didn't drown. I didn't even waver. Instead, I took every piece of evidence, every screenshot, every receipt, every timestamp, and saved it methodically in a separate folder on my desktop titled Truth. Because the truth, once uncovered, needs to be preserved. My phone buzzed. A message from my best friend Nita. "Lunch today." I stared at it. How do you tell someone your marriage has broken in ways you still don't fully understand? I put the phone aside. I wasn't ready. The wound was too fresh, too raw. Instead, I left for work, my mind replaying every memory with Zahir in reverse. Weddings, anniversaries, laughs, trips, fights, silence, distance. All the moments that seemed harmless now felt suspicious. Had he already started drifting before I noticed? Was he unhappy? Or was he simply greedy? Did he love her? Something twisted painfully inside me at that thought, but I pushed it down. At the university, I couldn't focus. Every student face blurred into one. Every conversation felt distant. I was inside my own mind, replaying evidence like a crime documentary, and in a way, it was. My marriage was a crime scene. Zahir was the culprit, and I was the detective piecing together the story. That evening when I returned home, the house felt different. Like the walls knew, like the furniture sensed betrayal deep in its fabric. Zahir wasn't home yet. Long surgery, he had texted. I opened the bank app. He had withdrawn 15,000 rupees that afternoon. For what, for whom? I checked the statement. A jewelry shop, another gift, another lie. And then I found the final piece that broke something inside me completely. A hotel booking confirmation for Friday night. The same night he had booked the candlelight dinner. The same night he told me he had an emergency operation at the hospital. A double lie, a layered lie, a lie wrapped in another lie. And I realized something then. Zahir wasn't just cheating. He was living a second life. A life with another woman. A life designed to coexist with mine, hidden beneath excuses and medical jargon and shifts that never happened. I closed my laptop slowly and sat in the quiet darkness of my living room. 12 years. 12 years of loyalty. 12 years of sacrifices. 12 years of choosing him, even when choosing myself would have been easier. And he threw it away for someone whose age probably matched his niece's. Something inside me hardened. A part of me that used to hope, used to forgive, used to dream. That part died quietly in that moment. The remaining part of me, the one stitched together with calm fury, stood up and walked to my desk. I opened a notebook and began planning. I didn't want drama for the sake of drama. I wanted exposure. I wanted truth to stand naked under the lights. I wanted his lies to collapse in front of the world he had served as a respected surgeon. And so I wrote the message for the card. There's something deliciously painful about writing your own heartbreak with your own hand. Something poetic, something final. When I finished, I took a picture and sent it to Bilal. Print this exactly. No changes, he replied instantly. As you wish, Baji, this will deliver Friday 8 sharp. I closed my eyes. Friday, the night his world would flip, the night my pain would speak, the night his lies would die. And as much as it hurt, as much as my chest felt bruised, I knew one thing clearly. This wasn't revenge. This was justice. And justice, when delayed, becomes devastating. Friday arrived with a tension so thick it felt like humidity. The kind Karachi air gets before a storm. I woke up early, too early. My body buzzed with restless energy, like my nerves understood that tonight was the night everything would collapse and begin again. Zahir had already left by 7 a.m. He said he had a surgical workshop at the hospital and wouldn't be back until late. I nodded like a supportive wife, kissed him goodbye like everything was normal, and closed the door behind him with a calmness that surprised even me. The house felt strangely quiet, not empty but waiting, like it knew tonight it would witness something irreversible. I sat on the sofa, opened my laptop, and checked the folder again. The evidence was organized, labeled, time-stamped. Google Photos, WhatsApp backups, bank statements, receipts, everything was neat. It looked less like proof of cheating and more like a prosecution file. For hours, I paced around the living room. I tried reading, failed, tried cooking. Failed, tried sleeping, failed again. The clock ticked louder than usual. It felt like my heartbeat had synced with it, every second dragging me closer to 8 o'clock. Around noon, I called Bilal. All set? Everything is ready, Baji. The table set up, roses, candles, the dessert plate, everything you wrote on the card, I'm delivering personally. Good, I whispered. Good wasn't enough, I wanted perfect. At 4 p.m., I drove to the hospital's rooftop parking. From there, I could see the restaurant Baltic Pearl located right across the street. The place where Zahir proposed. The place where tonight he thought he would charm another woman with the same lines, same setup, same gestures he once used on me. I sat in my car and watched couples arrive. Some smiling, some arguing, some holding hands. My reflection in the rearview mirror looked nothing like them. I wasn't here for romance. I was here for truth. As the sun began to set, the Karachi sky turned orange and pink, a beautiful backdrop for an ugly reality. At 7:45 p.m., my phone pinged, a message from Bilal. Reached, setting up now. My stomach twisted. I could almost imagine the scene, a round table draped in white linen, crystal glasses reflecting candlelight. Rose petals scattered elegantly, a music playlist softly playing romantic classics, everything perfect, everything curated, everything prepared for a woman who thought she had captured a married man's heart. At 7:58 p.m., I saw Zahir's car pull up near the restaurant. He stepped out wearing a charcoal suit, clean-shaven, confident. He checked his watch, he looked excited, the way he used to look when he would surprise me. A sharp pain cut through my chest, but I didn't look away. He walked inside. At exactly 8:03 p.m. she arrived. Hania, young, beautiful, dressed in a red dress that clung to her body like a second skin. Her hair open, styled effortlessly, she looked like the kind of woman who thought life owed her attention. And maybe it did, but not mine. She stepped inside with a smile, unaware that her night was about to turn into the worst dinner of her life. I remained in my car, hidden, waiting for the explosion. At 8:11 p.m., my phone rang. Bill, Badgie, she read the card. I closed my eyes. What happened? Maya Badgie, she froze, then she dropped the card. Then she looked at Zahir like he slapped her. She's crying now. People are staring. Staff is whispering. Zahir looks terrified. A silence pooled between us. Should I leave? He asked. No, I whispered. Stay. Watch, because tonight wasn't just about catching a cheater. It was about removing his mask. A minute later, another message from Bill arrived, this time a photo. I hesitated before opening it, but curiosity won. It showed Hania standing at the table, mascara running down her cheeks, holding the card with trembling fingers. Zahir beside her, reaching out to calm her, confusion on his face. Behind them, other diners watched openly. Phones recording, staff whispering behind the counter. My card was clearly visible in the picture. This was the moment. The revelation, the truth unmasked. I watched Zahir grab his phone and dial frantically. My screen lit up, Zahir calling. I didn't pick up, he called again, I let it ring. By the fourth call, I blocked him. The silence that followed was the calmest I had felt in weeks. The kind of calm that comes after a storm, shatters everything and leaves behind a clarity so sharp it cuts. By 8:30 p.m., they were escorted out of the restaurant. Hania stormed off. Zahir ran after her. People turned and stared. His world collapsed exactly the way I wanted it to, publicly, loudly, brutally. But the night wasn't over. This was only step 1. Step 2 was the courtroom. Step 3 was the medical board. And step 4, that was freedom. Freedom for me. Consequences for him, because this wasn't revenge, it was accountability. And accountability had just begun. The night after the dinner explosion, Karachi didn't sleep, but I did. For the first time in months, maybe years, I slept deeply. And when I woke up, I felt something unfamiliar on my skin. Calm. Not peace exactly, peace was still far away, but a strange, quiet certainty. Like I had turned a page, crossed a line, stepped into a version of myself I didn't know existed. Zahir hadn't returned home. Not that I expected him to. He had tried calling over and over last night. Messages, voicemails, missed calls, all ignored. I knew exactly where he'd gone, to clean up the mess he made with Hania, to do damage control, to spin lies into something palatable. I made breakfast for myself, a simple paratha and chai. The kitchen felt different today. The sunlight came through the blinds like it used to years ago, before lies slipped into the cracks of my house. The plates looked brighter. Even the spoon resting in my cup looked honest. Maybe betrayal clears your vision. Maybe you see truth in objects once you remove the person who poisoned them. At 9:15 a.m., as I was getting ready to leave for work, my phone buzzed again. It was Bill. Maya Badgie, something's happening at the hospital. My heartbeat jumped. What happened? I'm nearby. I had a delivery at the hospital cafeteria. Badgie, people are talking. About last night? My grip tightened around the phone. What exactly are they saying? That Zahir Sir's scandal went public. That someone recorded the dinner drama. That patients they're refusing to meet him. And he hesitated. And what Bilal? His staff is panicking. They're shouting inside the orthopedic department. Some nurses are saying they won't work with him because they don't want to get dragged into legal trouble. I stood very still. The weight of those words sank in slowly. Send me the video if you find it, I said quietly. Jai Badgie. I ended the call and stared at my reflection in the mirror. For a moment, I saw something almost frightening. A woman who wasn't breaking, wasn't begging, wasn't clinging. A woman who had burned down the facade of a perfect marriage and now watched the flames consume the lies. I left home and drove to the university, but instead of entering, I took a detour. Straight to the hospital. Not to confront Zahir, that part was over, but to see the aftermath. To witness the fallout of truth when it finally crashes into a life built on deception. The hospital parking lot was buzzing, not the usual morning rush. This was different. Tight circles of staff whispering intensely. Some pointing toward the main entrance, some shaking their heads. I walked closer, blending into the background like a ghost moving unnoticed. Then I heard it. Did you see the video? Oh my God, yes, that dinner setup and the card. I swear I felt second-hand embarrassment. And Hania crying like that, yar so messy. What about Dr. Zahir's face, pale like he saw a ghost? Patients walked out today, 3 canceled appointments. 2 asked for refunds. The administration is furious, they called him into a meeting. Their voices were sharp, excited, scandalous. Gossip spreads faster than infection inside hospitals, and today, Zahir was the virus. I stood near the elevator and checked my phone. No messages from him, no calls this morning. He knew I wouldn't respond. He knew the story was out of his control now. Some staff members brushed past me, rushing somewhere. The board wants to meet him, one whispered. The board of governors or the medical board, another asked. Both, I think. I exhaled slowly. Step 2 of my silent war had begun. I walked through the corridor until I reached the orthopedic section. It was chaos. The receptionist looked overwhelmed. A patient's family was demanding a different doctor. A nurse walked by, shaking her head angrily. He should have thought of his license before cheating like a teenager, she muttered. Then I saw him, Zahir, standing outside his office, facing 4 members of the hospital administration. His shoulders were tense. His eyes looked red, tired, shaken. The confident surgeon persona was gone, replaced by a man unraveling piece by piece. The head of administration spoke loudly enough for half the corridor to hear. Dr. Zahir, you understand the seriousness of this situation. This hospital's reputation is at stake. It was a personal matter, he said weakly. That personal matter happened in a public place with hospital staff present. The video makes it worse. So the video existed. I stepped back into an alcove and watched silently. He looked like he wanted to disappear. A man who had spent years building pride was now drowning in humiliation. People walked past him without greeting him, some avoided eye contact, others whispered openly. A senior surgeon walked by and muttered, shameful, absolutely shameful. Zahir flinched. The administration ended the conversation abruptly. We will contact the medical ethics board. Until then, no elective surgeries, only emergency cases, and stay available. He nodded, defeated. He turned toward the corridor, and for a second our eyes met, just a second. But that second was enough to remind him who had started this. Me. He opened his mouth slightly as if to speak, but I turned and walked away before he could try. In that moment I didn't feel triumph, not satisfaction. Not even anger, I felt clarity. And clarity is the sharpest knife of all. By the time I reached the parking lot, Bilal had sent the video. It was grainy but clear enough, Hania reading my card, breaking down. Zahir trying to calm her, people whispering, someone recording from behind a pillar. I watched it once. Then I saved it, not to post, not to humiliate. I didn't need public approval. I needed leverage, and leverage is power. As I drove away, my phone rang. A new number. This is Advocate Samina Najib calling on behalf of the Pakistan Medical Ethics Committee, a firm voice said. We'd like to discuss a formal complaint filed by you regarding Dr. Zahir Khan. I swallowed. Of course, I said softly. We will need complete documentation. Are you prepared to submit evidence? I'm prepared, I replied. Good, then we will proceed. You may be asked to testify. I understand. When the call ended, the air inside the car felt different. Heavy, but in a righteous way. Zahir wasn't just losing face, he was about to lose much more. His position, his reputation, his license, his carefully polished life. Chaos hadn't even peaked yet. This was just the beginning. 2 days after the hospital chaos, I visited the lawyer. Not just any lawyer, one of the sharpest legal minds in the city. A woman named Advocate Fariha Ali. I chose her for a reason. She was known for having a cold, surgical style in the courtroom. The kind of woman who didn't blink when tearing a man's ego to shreds. Her office was minimalistic. White walls, glass table, files stacked with precision. She offered me tea, but I declined. My nerves didn't need caffeine. She folded her hands on the table. Tell me everything. I handed her the flash drive with all the evidence. Photos, screenshots, receipts, messages, even the hotel bookings. It was like placing my broken marriage on her desk. She took her time. She studied each image, zoomed in, analyzed timestamps, cross-referenced transactions. After 20 minutes, she leaned back and said words I never expected to hear. Maya, this is not just infidelity. This is financial misconduct. He's used your joint funds for an affair, and that changes everything. My heartbeat raced. What do you mean? I mean, you are entitled to a major share of the assets, the house, the bank accounts, potentially even part of his private practice value. I don't want revenge, I murmured. No, she said calmly. You want justice, and justice requires pressure. Pressure, something Zahir had never experienced in 12 years of marriage. I had never demanded anything, never fought, never questioned. That version of me was gone. What's the first step? I asked. We file for divorce immediately, quietly, then serve him during working hours. In front of his colleagues if needed. I blinked. That sounds harsh. It's not harsh, she said. It's strategy. She drafted the paperwork while I sat there, feeling the weight of every word etched on those documents. Grounds. Proven infidelity, financial exploitation, emotional distress. At one point I hesitated. She noticed. You're thinking of backing out, she said. I'm thinking he used to be a good man once. She looked at me steadily. That good man left a long time ago. What's left is someone who broke your trust without remorse. She was right. The man I loved wasn't the man standing at that dinner table with another woman. He had chosen a different path, and I had no obligation to follow him down it. I'm ready, I said finally. She smiled slightly. Good, then sign here. My signature felt like a knife slicing through 12 years of memories. But it also felt like freedom, heavy freedom, but freedom nonetheless. At 6 p.m. that day, the divorce petition was officially stamped and filed. The next morning, Zahir received the notice. I wasn't there, but Fariha sent one of her assistants to witness it. The assistant messaged me later, served at 10:12 a.m. He turned pale, dropped the file, did not speak. His colleagues saw everything? I sat on the edge of my bed staring at that message. A small part of me ached, not for him but for the version of me who once believed he'd never do this. By noon, Zahir called. I didn't pick up. He called again and again, then he texted. Maya, please, we need to talk. We can't undo this. I'm sorry. You're sorry because you got caught. That's not fair. You're right. Fair would have been you not lying. A long pause. What do you want from me? Nothing, I replied. Absolutely nothing. He sent another message after a while. Hania left. She blocked me. She quit the hospital. You should have thought of that before ruining 2 lives, I typed. Please don't drag my career into this. I stared at the message. Your career? What about my life, my dignity, my trust, my marriage? But I didn't text any of that. Instead, I wrote. Talk to your lawyer? On Tuesday, we met for the first time since the night of the dinner disaster. Fariha insisted the meeting happen in her office, not mine, not his, a neutral arena where truth couldn't hide. Zahir walked in looking 10 years older, unshaven, dark circles under his eyes. His expensive watch looked misplaced on his trembling wrist. Maya, he said softly. I didn't respond. He sat down across from me. I made a mistake. Mistakes are forgetting birthdays, I said quietly. Affairs are choices. He opened his mouth, but Fariha cut in. Dr. Zahir, we're not here for apologies. We're here to discuss terms. She slid the folder across the table. Given the evidence, Maya is entitled to the house, 50% of your savings, and compensation for financial misuse. We're also pursuing a review of your medical ethics breach. His face drained of blood. You're dragging the medical board into this? You dragged them, Fariha said sharply. We're just informing them. He leaned back, defeated. I'm willing to compensate, but please don't file a board complaint. I finally spoke. It's already filed. His breath hitched. For the first time, I saw genuine fear in his eyes. The kind of fear a man feels when he realizes the ground he stood on has turned into sand. When did you become like this? He whispered. When you made me live like that, I replied. The meeting lasted an hour, papers reviewed. Terms negotiated, boundaries drawn. When it was done, Zahir stood up slowly. I never meant to hurt you, he murmured. You didn't mean to get caught, I said. He looked at me for a long moment before leaving. As the door closed behind him, something inside me snapped cleanly, like a thread breaking after holding too much weight. Fariha turned to me. Are you okay? I nodded. I expected this day. She gave a small, approving smile. You handled it better than most. The next morning, the medical ethics board sent me a notice. They needed full testimony along with digital evidence. I compiled everything carefully and submitted it. Screenshots, call logs, payments, hotel bookings, timeline. Each file was a tiny wound, but together they formed a weapon. A week later, I received another call from the board. Dr. Zahir will undergo a formal inquiry. We need you to appear. I closed my eyes and inhaled deeply. Of course, I said, this wasn't about revenge, this was about accountability. This was about consequences finally catching up with a man who thought he was untouchable. A storm was coming, not for me, for him, and I was standing on the driest ground I had ever been on. The day of the medical board inquiry arrived with a strange kind of stillness. Not peaceful stillness, the kind that sits between two earthquakes. I woke up before sunrise, made tea, and sat near the window watching Karachi slowly wake up. For years, I woke up as a wife. Today, I woke up as a witness, not just in the legal sense, but in a personal one, a witness to the collapse of a man who believed consequences were optional. I got dressed carefully, not flashy, not soft. A charcoal gray camis, simple earrings, tied hair. The kind of outfit that didn't scream for attention but commanded presence quietly. I picked up my file, the same file that held the truth of a marriage I once believed was unbreakable, and walked out the door. When I reached the board's office, the hallway smelled like antiseptic and stale paper. A reminder that this wasn't an emotional confrontation. This was an institutional one. A place where rules were written in cold ink, where emotions were irrelevant, where titles didn't matter when the truth stood tall. Zahir arrived 10 minutes after me. For a moment, my breath caught. He looked broken, not physically. Physically, he was still the man I once loved, tall, well-groomed, intelligent. But something inside him had withered. His posture slouched slightly. His eyes were hollow. His movements were slow, hesitant, almost insecure. He sat across the waiting room. Our eyes met. He opened his mouth, perhaps to apologize again, perhaps to beg, perhaps to explain. But I turned away before words could pollute the air between us. They called him in first. For 30 minutes, I sat outside listening to muffled voices. Once a raised tone. Once a loud thud, maybe a frustrated fist on the table. I imagined the questions they were asking him. I imagined him fumbling, explaining, trying to paint himself as the victim of a moment of weakness. But weakness has never been an excuse for betrayal. When they finally called me in, the room fell into silence. 4 board members sat behind a long table. Zahir sat to the side, shoulders tense, hands clenched. His lawyer sat beside him, shifting nervously. One of the board members spoke. "Mrs. Maya, please present the relevant evidence in sequence." I placed the file on the table and began. I didn't speak with venom. I didn't cry. I didn't tremble. I delivered facts the way a surgeon delivers cuts, clean, precise, intentional. Photos, screenshots, hotel bookings, candlelight dinners, card transactions, WhatsApp voice notes, everything. The board members nodded, took notes, asked questions. One of them looked genuinely disturbed at the timeline. "How long has this been going on?" they asked. 4 months, I said. Zahir spoke then, voice shaking. "It wasn't like that. She's making it sound worse." I turned my head slowly and looked directly at him. "I'm not making it sound like anything," I said. "This is what happened. You wrote the script. I'm just reading it aloud." The board asked him to remain quiet, a rule he should have learned years ago. After 30 more minutes of questioning, they dismissed us with a curt statement. "You will be notified in 2 weeks." 2 weeks. 2 weeks for him to sit in the waiting room of his own consequences. As we walked out, Zahir followed me to the exit. "Maya, please," he murmured. "I'm begging you, you've made your point. Please don't let them destroy my profession." Something inside me cracked at that. Not sympathy, not guilt, something else. Recognition. The man begging for his career was the same man who once held my hand during my mother's surgery. The man who once made me tea during exam season. The man who promised me on the rooftop restaurant he later took another woman to that we'd build a future together. He was that man once. But he wasn't anymore. "I didn't destroy anything," I replied quietly. "You did, I just showed them the truth." He looked like he might collapse then and there. I walked away, not because I didn't care, but because caring was no longer my responsibility. The next week was a blur of legal paperwork, uncomfortable silence, distant relatives asking questions I refused to answer, and the slow process of separation. Zahir moved out of our house into a small rented apartment. His hospital removed him from elective surgeries. Patients began switching doctors. The medical board's inquiry leaked to a few online forums and rumors spread faster than oxygen. One evening, Fariha called. Good news, bad news. Which one? Good first, I said. Zahir is ready to settle without contest. He wants to finalize the divorce quickly. And the bad? I asked. His practice is drowning. Financially and reputationally, he tried to refinance. Banks refused. Why is that bad news for me? For you, it's not. For him, it's catastrophic. Something about her calm tone made the moment feel surreal. People think the pain of betrayal is the sharpest part. It's not. The sharpest part is watching the person who hurt you face their own downfall. A downfall you didn't even have to orchestrate. You just stepped out of the way and let his own actions drag him down. The divorce hearing was scheduled for the following Thursday. He arrived wearing the same suit he wore to family weddings. His eyes were swollen, his face thinner, his nerves visible in every movement. His lawyer looked defeated before we even entered the courtroom. The judge listened patiently, read the documents, reviewed evidence, and then she issued the verdict in a tone that sounded final even if she didn't intend it to. Marriage dissolved, assets divided as per agreement. Mrs. Maya receives the house, vehicle, and 50% of financial holdings. Dr. Zahir must pay compensatory damages for financial misuse. Case closed. Case closed. Just like that, years of love ended in a signature and a stamp, but endings aren't always explosions. Sometimes they're quiet, sometimes they're just a door closing softly. Zahir approached me outside, walking like a man carrying invisible weights. Maya, I know you'll never forgive me, I don't deserve it, but I hope one day you find happiness again. It wasn't manipulation. It wasn't pleading. It wasn't anger, it was acceptance. And acceptance is the end of war, I nodded once. You will get through this, Zahir, I said finally. Not because I want you to, but because you have to. And with that, I walked away. 2 weeks later, the medical board announced their decision. Zahir was suspended for 6 months, mandatory ethics training, a public reprimand posted online, practice under supervision upon return. His career wasn't dead, but it was bruised, limping, humbled. He sent me an email the next day. Thank you for being honest in the inquiry. You didn't exaggerate anything. I deserved the suspension. It was the closest thing to closure I would ever get. And I accepted it, not because it healed everything, but because it put a period where he once put question marks. The divorce papers arrived 6 days later. I held the envelope in my hands for several minutes before opening it. The official stamp looked surreal. A chapter of my life neatly packed inside thin sheets of paper. A chapter I once believed would last forever. I placed the papers on the dining table and looked around my home. My home, not ours. Not shared, not borrowed, mine. The silence felt different now. Not suffocating, not empty, not broken, warm, like the quiet that exists after a storm has washed everything away and left behind a clean horizon. I spent the next week rearranging furniture, not dramatically but subtly, like reclaiming little territories of my life. I moved the couch slightly to the right, replaced old cushions, removed the wedding photo from the hallway and replaced it with a painting of the sea. An empty frame once haunted me, now it liberated me. One afternoon, as I watered the plants in my balcony, my phone pinged. A message from my colleague at the university. Maya, the department wants to offer you the position of senior counselor. Higher pay, more independence, you deserve this. I stared at the screen and felt a smile forming. A real smile. Not polite, not forced, not socially necessary. A smile born from possibility. I accepted. 3 days later, my childhood friend Nita insisted we go on a short trip. You've been locked in a storm for months, she said. It's time you breathe. She wasn't wrong. We planned a 5-day trip to Hunza. It wasn't Greece or Turkey like our competitor's story, it didn't need to be. Because healing doesn't have to come from foreign skies. Sometimes healing comes from mountains that have watched your entire life from a distance. When we arrived, the cold air hit me like a rebirth. The mountains stood tall, still, indifferent to human drama. I sat near Adabad Lake with the wind brushing my hair, and for the first time in a long while I didn't think about Zahir. I didn't think about betrayal. I didn't think about consequences. I thought about myself, my life, my dreams, my quiet strength. I realized something then, something simple yet profound. Pain is not the end of the story. It is the beginning of the next one. One evening, as we sat near a bonfire surrounded by strangers and stars, I laughed. Not cautiously, not hesitantly, full, loud, free. Nita looked at me and smiled. I've missed this version of you. I've missed her too, I whispered. When I returned to Karachi, I stood at my gate, inhaled deeply, and walked inside like stepping into a new life. One morning, while cleaning out the study room, I found my old notebook. The one where I used to write small poems, quotes, unfinished stories. I hadn't opened it in years. I sat on the floor, flipping through pages filled with dreams I had abandoned when life became routine. And then I picked up a pen. Not to write about betrayal, but to write about rebirth. I wrote the first chapter of a book, not a book about Zahir, not a book about Hania, not a book about revenge. A book for women who forgot themselves in the process of loving someone else. A book for women who needed reminders. A book for someone like me. The first line I wrote was this: sometimes life doesn't break you, it frees you. As days passed, something unexpected happened. I didn't feel lonely anymore. I felt spacious, like my soul had room to grow again. One morning, as I sipped chai on my balcony, watching the sun rise over my city, my phone buzzed. A message from a number I didn't recognize. Hello, ma'am. I attended your counseling session last year. You once told me pain is temporary but lessons are permanent. You saved me, thank you. I stared at it for a long time. It felt like the universe reminding me that I wasn't defined by what happened to me. I was defined by what I did next. And what I did next was simple. I lived, not as someone's wife, not as someone's victim, not as someone's betrayed partner. I lived as myself, whole, healing, hopeful. A week later, I went to the sea. Alone, I stood at the edge of the waves and let the water touch my feet. The wind felt warm. The horizon felt endless. I whispered into the wind, not for Zahir, not for Hania, but for myself. This is not the end. This is where I begin. And for the first time since everything fell apart, I truly believed it.